Good evening, everyone. I'm McKenna. I'm the owner of Murder by the Book in Houston, Texas. And I'm really excited this evening to be joined by two authors that I am longtime friends with and big fans of. And then a new addition that I hope to hear lots from this evening. So we're going to have Rhys Bowen here with her daughter, Clare Broyles, talking about the new Molly Murphy book. And our guest moderator for the evening is Deborah Crombie. So if you have any questions, don't be shy. Put those in the live chat on YouTube or in the comments here on Facebook. Also, I've just put a link in the comments on both platforms. If you want more information about the authors or you're interested in ordering books, which we would greatly appreciate as always, the link is in the comments. So I think since I'm sure this conversation is going to be delightful this evening, I'm going to go ahead and get things going. Let me start with Rhys Bowen. Good evening, Rhys. How are you?
Hi, McKenna. So long since I've seen you. You're looking gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet. I wish we were doing this in person, but congratulations on the new book out today.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah,
it is. And I love the blue on you. It's such a pretty color.
Thank you. Yes.
Of course. I'm going to do your I'm going to do your official bio here quickly, and we'll get the others on here as well. So Rhys Bowen is the author of the Anthony Award and Agatha Award-winning Molly Murphy mysteries, the Edgar Award-nominated Evan Evans series, the Royal Spyness series, and In Farleigh Field, and many other standalone novels as well. Born in England, she lives in San Rafael, California, and as I mentioned, today is a new Molly Murphy release date, Wild Irish Rose. Now, this one's a little different because it was co-authored with your daughter, Clare, who I'm going to bring on here as well. Good evening, Clare.
Hi.
Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, I'm so excited.
I am spying those release day flowers behind you. It's such a nice backdrop.
Yep, that's sent by my son. And then there's another bouquet in the other room sent by my husband.
Well, that's great. You deserve to be spoiled. This is quite the event, and I'm sure this is going to be a fun conversation. I'm going to do your bio as well really quickly. Clare Broyles, who is Rhys Bowen's daughter, is a teacher and a musician. He has worked as a composer and arranger in the theater for both Arizone Theater Company and Childsplay, and was nominated for an Arizone Zoni Theater Award. Clare is married to a teacher, and they have 3 children. As I said, we are also joined by guest moderator Deborah Crombie. Hi, Deb. How are you?
Hi, McKenna. It's so lovely to see you. And I have to echo Rhys. You just look gorgeous.
Oh, thank you so much. That's very sweet. It's just good lighting. I miss seeing you in person. It's been way too long.
I know.
Well, hopefully there's a book in the works and we'll get to see you soon for that one. Maybe we'll hear about it later. I'm going to do your bio as well, and then I'm going to leave you 3 to chat. So Deborah Crombie is a New York Times bestselling author and a native Texan who's lived in both England and Scotland. She now lives in McKinney, Texas, sharing a house that's more than 100 years old with her husband, 3 cats, and 2 German shepherds. That's my cue to leave. You ladies have fun. I can't wait to just sit back here and listen to this chat. And if you need anything, I'll be here. And when you're ready, call me on to do the audience questions. Bye.
Thanks, McKenna. Bye.
Well, I have to start out by saying that, Claire, I'm so happy to meet you, but I feel like I know you already from chatting with Rhys about you and having seen your fun photos on Facebook. And Claire and Rhys, you were both our guests on the Jungle Red blog today, and the photos were wonderful. You just looked so happy and chatting together. But my favorite was the first one where you were throttling each other.
That happens quite often when we work together, you know.
So I had to start out by asking if you actually wanted to kill each other while you were writing this book, or did you get along?
Not at all did we want to kill each other. We actually got along really, really well. We had so much fun writing it, and even to the point that we each had different scenes that we wanted to write. And I always felt so thankful. A lot of times the scenes I thought, no, there's no way I want to write this. Then Rhys would just take it, and it seems like she just zips through it so fast, and there's this perfect scene done. And I think, oh, thank God I didn't, especially when Molly would have to go anywhere and get across the city. For me, that would have been, like 10 hours of research, looking over a map of 1900 and to see where Molly went. And then my mom can just like write the scene. It's all in her head. So it was a great lesson.
Well, the collaboration process is always so interesting. So was that your basic premise, that you would alternate scenes, or?
Not really. We talked through, Claire was the one who had the great idea for the plot. And then we talked through where we wanted to go. And then really we took what we thought we'd like, and what, Claire would say, well, why don't I handle the party scene? Because I can really see it really clearly in my head. And she'd go and do that. And I'd say, well, I want to do the scenes where we lead up, so it worked out really well. I think, I have to say with Claire, she's been my good child. I don't think we've ever had a real argument in our life. I think, she's very sweet-natured.
Not even when she was a teenager.
Yeah, no, we went around Europe for a month on a train. We were just, we had a Euro pass. We went around Europe for a month, and I don't think we ever had one disagreement the whole time. In fact, we laughed an awful lot. We had some awful horror things happen, and we just lay there and laughed. And then when we were on these long train journeys, we played Lord of the Rings trivia ad nauseam, because we're both huge fans. So one of us would be sleeping and the other would go, what was the name of the Ent's wife? And then we'd go back to sleep, and then the other one would say, at the siege of Rohan, what was the archer? So we're on, I think the whole thing is we're on the same wavelength. We make each other laugh very easily, because I think we see fun in the same things. And it was so smooth and so seamless, I have to say. When Claire came to me a couple of years ago and said, I think, because I put Molly Murphy on hold because I was already doing 2 books a year, and however crazy I am, 3 books a year was just beyond it. And she said, I think I'd like to revive the Molly Murphy series with you. And I was a little bit hesitant, because obviously she's my daughter and I love her. And I thought, well, what if this doesn't work? And I have to say, no, this doesn't work. Or what if it's going to be way too much work for me? What if I find I'm really coaching her on how to write a novel all the time? And it turned out that she just took it and ran with it. She read all 17 books before we started. So Molly's voice was just there, and it came to her. And, literally, I didn't have to say once, no, we need to see in this scene how we show Molly's frustration. She just knew. And so it's been so easy to work with. We just say, how about we do so-and-so? And the other one says, oh, I like that. Yes. And then it sparks the other one. We say, well, when they're doing this, why don't we know that? And then we go, oh, yes. And then, so it goes really easily.
And by the way, cheers. It's Fat Tuesday and your pub day, and so I thought
I meant to bring a glass up. I
thought I would look festive, and I'm wearing my rose T-shirt.
Thank you. Yeah. Rose. I meant to bring a glass of bubbly up, but we're going out to dinner afterwards, so that will be the bubbly. So
that'll be fun. So Claire, I think it was really brave of you. Did you have trepidation in going to your mom and saying, I would like to do this? Had you ever just kind of talked about it before, or?
We had not talked about it before. I wasn't as nervous approaching her with it to start with, because I figured if she thought it was a bad idea, she'd just say no. So, when I started, when I did have trepidation was when the blank page was in front of me. And I had said, I will write this scene. And then I thought, oh, well, can I write this scene? I really hope I can. So I think, isn't that every writer's trepidation? The blank screen.
Oh, the terror of the blank page.
Yeah. I mean, Debs and I have done God knows how many books now, and I have to tell you, really, the terror never gets less, does it, Debs? It's just every time I start a new book, I always think, oh, can I write this story? And I think I'm going to say everything I want to say in 50 pages, and it's going to be way too short. And then I think, well, what if I can't come up with a satisfactory ending for it? And so literally the first 100 pages, I think, are in pretty much panic mode of every book I've done. And then after 100 pages, I think, oh, well, I see where this is going now. And by the time you get to 200 pages, you go, oh, well, I know where we are now. That's good. And but it has to work that way, that, you have to feel the terror, or the plot doesn't really come out.
Oh, I have terror from scene to scene. Especially because I'm viewpoint switching, so it's not, you get on a roll with one character and then all of a sudden you're switching to a different one. Well, I have to say, from a reader's standpoint, that I thought the work was just seamless, that it was Molly's voice, and I couldn't, for the life of me, have said, well, Rhys wrote this or Clare wrote this. It was just a Molly Murphy book, and it was just so exciting. So
I think we can't actually tell afterwards who wrote what, because what we did was one of us would write a scene, the other one would go through and put in their comments, their edits, and say, at this stage, wasn't Molly going to do so and so at this stage, or does she look sufficiently worried, and so we would bounce ideas off each other. And so the scenes ended up being a collaboration, but I can't tell who wrote what to start with.
No, me neither.
So Clare, today on Jungle Red, you told a funny story about your organic chemistry professor and him saying, well, maybe you should change your major because poetry is obviously your strong suit and organic chemistry is not. And I was a biology major, so I felt that, because actually organic chemistry was not too bad.
Really? I think
organic chemistry is horrible.
The worst.
So I was wondering what your background was.
Well, I started out pre-med in school. So I was biology for pre-med. And about halfway through, I had some minor thing. I think they thought I had appendicitis or something. And I ended up in the hospital for a couple of days. Not very serious, but I realized I hate hospitals, and I would hate to spend my life sort of in a hospital all the time. And I don't want to take all the time I would have to in a hospital to turn out a doctor. And that probably was right around the time that organic chemistry professor made that comment. So I added an English literature major onto that, which I loved. I absolutely, if you get to, for fun, read Chaucer and go in and talk about it, I don't think anything's more fun than that. But then when it came to sort of doing the masters after, I realized in order to do that, you have to sort of pick one little thing apart and say, well, Shakespeare was so unhappy because he had lost his dog between this play and that play. You have to, in order to go on in literature like that, often you have to have
it takes the fun out of it.
Yes, it does. So I've done a lot of volunteer work. I did about 10 years of volunteer work working with migrants and in a shanty town in Mexico. And then I also got another degree in music. And so since my son has been, my kids were born, I've been working as a music teacher at a Montessori school. And then, I've done some composing, and recently also been teaching math. I've taught writing. I've taught Spanish. So
I'd say that is very well-rounded. What's your instrument? Do you have a preferred?
My primary is voice, so I'm primarily a singer. I also play guitar and piano and mandolin and banjo and recorder, some violin, viola. Every year I pick up a different instrument and try and get better
instruments. Yeah.
I'm feeling very inadequate here.
Yeah. Every time I come over, she's got a new instrument that she's found that she's now teaching herself. Like she even had a trombone once, which her son nearly killed my husband with.
Now that we might have to save that story. That sounds like a good one.
Right.
So, Clare, did you always want to write?
Yes, I always have written. So I'm sure when I was younger, I thought about writing a novel, and I probably have a whole notebook full of novel ideas I was going to write, but I would always write parodies. So for my family, for Christmas, I would write like poetry parodies for them. And every job I was at, I would end up like writing little play parodies that I would hand out. So I really do enjoy making things funny and making people situation with my writing. But it's really, I can't tell you what a gift this has been. If somebody mentioned today on Jungle Red that she liked writing fan fiction. And for me, this has been like writing fan fiction. So
well,
yeah, I get to go play around in the world. Sorry.
I have to apologize if I am inclined to misspell your name, because my daughter's middle name is Clare, but she's Clare with an I.
Yeah.
So, but I can't imagine anything more fun than doing a project like that with my daughter. She's my favorite traveling companion in the world, and I think it would be so much fun. You didn't, because of the pandemic, get to do a research trip together. So, and as our readers, listeners may know, this story involves Ellis Island. And I think it's a wonderful circular thing, because in the very first Molly Murphy book, Molly comes to America and through Ellis Island. And I love the idea that this book takes us back to Ellis Island. And I was wondering, Clare, if you had actually been there and seen that.
I have not, and I would love to go. Of course, I did a lot of research, anything I had to write about it, but then also I went back to the first Molly Murphy, because my mom had described it so well in the first Molly Murphy that you felt like you were there. So I was going back to the first book so that the things that Molly went through, then, she would see again, and the new characters would go through.
Yeah, it was Clare who suggested that, because it had been 4 years since we'd had a Molly book out, that there might be people who were no longer familiar with the series. And she suggested that we should come full circle like this. We should give Molly a case which really reminds her of her own entry into New York and what she went through there. So, this was a fun one to write, because we echoed so many things that Molly had gone through.
And well, did you know New York well enough to have a template to put the historical part of the story into?
Oh, well, I've done, this is book 18. So I have done, over the years, loads and loads. When I first did Murphy's Law, which was the first book, I did lots of research on Ellis Island. I was there and I did research. And then, of course, at the end of the book, Molly steps ashore. And I thought, oh, wait, I'm going to have to spend my life in New York 1901, and I know nothing about it. It's going to be research on every page for the rest of my life. And that's pretty much what it's turned out to be. What fun research. During those early books, I would go to New York, and if Molly walked from A to B, I would walk, and I would say, do you get the wind from the Hudson as you turn that corner? Can you see this bit here? Can you hear those tugs on the East River from here? I do all that. And I would get letters from people saying, you had Molly walk from A to B, and it's quite impossible. And I would write back and go, I did it. So, I really do. I could give you a lovely walking tour of Molly's New York, because the lucky thing is that so much of it hasn't changed. She now lives in Greenwich Village in a house on Patchen Place, which is still delightful.
I looked it up.
Yeah, it's delightfully there. Patchen Place is this delightful little backwater with cobbles. And A few years ago, I got an email from a man who was a professor at Rutgers, and he said, "I want you to know I'm living in Molly's house." And he said,
how fun.
so he sent me pictures of the interior and the exterior, and they tried to sort of renovate it so that it looked from the period. And then I got invited to the block Christmas party. So, it's nice to know it's still there. And I've had lovely letters. I mean, obviously, I've never lived in New York. All of my research has been about New York, but I've had lovely letters over the years. There was one person who said, "I was born in that part of Greenwich Village, and my mother was, and my grandmother was, and my grandmother used to get her bread at that bakery. And I want to thank you for taking me back to my childhood." And that's when you've got it right, So
Goosebumps.
yeah, I know. So, but then we're adding to that is that Clare is the consummate researcher. So she is checking the New York Times for every day we write about, and
I read that on Jungle Red today. I was incredibly impressed by that. That's made me wonder if you were actually a history major.
No, she's a Renaissance woman. So that's what she is. But, and so for the next book, which we've now just finished and turned in, she came up with some really fantastic plot ideas based on what really happened, and she would say, "Oh, well, this happened. Perhaps we should put this into the story." And we haven't got as far yet. She hasn't told me, it's 53 degrees. So please go back and make Molly put a scarf on before she goes out. But it may happen.
Well, I wondered if one or the other of you had more of a feel for costumes or food or different parts of the social fabric.
I don't know.
My mom is the one. She writes so well about food. It makes me hungry all the time. Yeah. Every time she knows what meal they're going to have, how you would prepare that meal, what they would be eating. So a lot of times with the food scenes, I would just call and ask, what would they eat here? And she always remembers things like no fish on Fridays, it's Friday. Mm-hmm. So it was important to us to know what day the action took place on every day, because there are certain things that, you would have an earlier Sunday lunch, or you would have no fish on Friday, closed on Sunday, and important to know. But I love reading her descriptions of food.
Yeah, well, it's funny because in all my books, people write to me and say, you describe food so well. Are you a real foodie? Do you love to cook? And the answer is that I hate to cook. I like to eat. I keep hoping for my personal chef, but I have a husband who doesn't want anybody else in the kitchen, so it's really rather annoying. But I love it. The thing is, I write, every book I've written is a book I'd like to read, and it's not on a shelf. And I love reading about food, especially when you're reading about food in other countries and things. Just vicariously having those meals is just such fun.
Well, I'm fascinated by the clothing.
Yeah.
And there are some wonderful descriptions in this book of Molly's outfits and and
the outfit that Bridie was not allowed to wear, remember?
So much social weight attached to what people wore compared to modern times, and we're so careless with our clothes. And when you think they had to wear the same thing, two dresses or three and wash their linen, and it's just fascinating. I love the period. I think it is just really, really.
Yeah.
And
I think if you're going to write about a historical novel about a particular period, it behoves you to do all that research, because you're bringing it to life. You're not just getting a story in the present and putting it with someone with some petticoats on. You're saying, right now I'm taking you to 1907, so get ready, and then you do.
Yeah.
So what is in the works with Molly?
You want to tell Claire the next one a little bit?
A little bit about it. My brain's just gone blank.
Oh, well, yeah, Molly goes into the whorehouse. No, that wasn't right.
That wasn't it. I think the Titanic either.
The next one is called All That Is Hidden, and it's about New York crooked politics. There's a lot of real history in it. It's about William Randolph Hearst running for mayor against Tammany Hall, and about Tammany Hall controlling the docks and what went on the docks, the various levels of corruption there. A lot of corruption in the book. And Molly finding herself in a very strange and difficult circumstance that she really hadn't expected. And also, we've been following her ward, Bridie, who is now a teenager. And in the book that's just come out, Wild Irish Rose, we've seen Bridie acting like a teenager suddenly, feeling secure enough to act up. Well, in the next book, she's being sent to a very elite school, and she's finding it not that easy to be in an elite school. And but connections to her school friends are going to prove very useful in the plot.
Oh, that sounds fun. And New York was so crooked. It was it was so crooked. So that will be fascinating. Did the process on the second book go more smoothly than the first one, or?
I would say they were both smooth, wouldn't you, Mom?
About the same, yeah. I mean, yeah, what we did with this one, because obviously we haven't been able to travel much, but last summer, Claire, I spend my winters in Arizona, so she and I can actually see each other most days. But then my summers I spend in California. Claire came out for a couple of weeks, and then we went to San Diego together for a week. And during those couple of weeks, we thrashed through what we wanted the main bits of the plot to be. So we had a pretty good idea of where the plot was going by the end of those 3 weeks. And then we just sort of started, and I wrote. She wrote the beginning scenes of that. She got a good idea of how she wanted it to start. So that's, the more she does, the more I say great, and sit back.
Well, Jen had a great question for you today on Jungle Red, Claire, about what special things you would like to bring to the series. And you said about
Daniel.
Yes, which I loved. And you do get hints of that in Wild Irish Rose. So
yes, I mean, I like Daniel, but sometimes it's been hard.
He's such a stuffed shirt.
I know. So, and since Molly keeps in with him and keeps loving him, I think he eventually has to change a little bit to recognize. So that was one of my favorite scenes to write. There is a scene in which he does realize that she's done a great bit of detecting work and finally say, oh yes, that was a really good bit of detecting work. And that was fun to have that come out.
Yeah.
And I think we get a great sense of their relationship in this book, that it's not always Molly being wrong-footed because she's doing things that Daniel doesn't want her to do, but you see them in more sort of ordinary relationship where they're laughing, and you also get a really strong sense of their physical relationship, that they are in love and attracted to each other, which makes the other stuff work better.
Yeah, I mean, I've had quite a lot of letters over the years saying, oh, I can't stand Daniel. He's so horrible to Molly, and he bosses her around and things. The thing is, he was a man of his time.
He was a man of his time.
You have, I mean, I write back and say this. You have to understand that for his time, he's quite understanding to Molly. He is, by law, the head of the household. He can do anything he likes with his wife. She can own no property in New York. If she owns property, it goes straight into his name. If she tried to leave, she couldn't take any children with her. And he's allowed to beat her with a stick no thinner than his thumb. I mean, that's what it was like in New York for a woman. And you have to remember, too, half the population cannot vote. So much in New York you could look at, and if I dropped you there, you'd feel quite comfortable because not much has changed. But you have to remember, half the population is under the thumb of the other half. And so he's the head of the household. He's also he's very high up in the police force. And if anyone thought that his wife was being any sort of detective, he would be ribbed, and he would lose face.
Yeah. And I think that is all very clear. And which makes the fact, when they do manage to work together, even more satisfying.
Yeah.
I think we take so much for granted these days. I had to get my father to co-sign my first credit card.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had to get my husband in the 1970s. I had to get my husband to co-sign my first credit card. Yeah.
Which now people would just be horrified.
But it's still true. Claire was saying too the other day that, if you go in with your husband to buy a car and it's your money and you're buying the car, the salesperson will turn immediately to your husband.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so that it
hasn't changed entirely. No.
I think that's what Claire and I like, both being fairly ardent feminists. We like the fact that we are drawing attention to inequalities, and we can get nice little digs in about how things need to change and what has changed. So I think that's that's something in this series we enjoy, and we'll be enjoying following in future books, more suffrage things and that sort of thing.
Yeah, we are getting into really the heart of the suffrage movement, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, yes.
Great plot ideas.
It's wonderful to have Sid and Gus there because they manage that world so well, and they bring a lot of lightness and humor to it, but they are very ardent feminists and not going to be under the thumb of any man. So they're a good addition.
Yeah,
they are such wonderful characters. I love Sid and Gus.
Yeah, they're fun to write too, because you never know what they're going to be doing next. They, I think in this book, it's come out too that they're not totally to be relied on. They live their own lives, they live their own worlds, but they're off on their whims sometimes. So that's something we're learning as we go along. Is they're wonderful and they're so nice, but you shouldn't always. You've got Molly, who's the mom, and she's the solid figure, and she's the one you can rely on.
Well, and I think you've done a really good job of not having Liam completely hobble Molly's investigations, because it's hard with a baby, but we know
that very well, don't you?
We get a sense of how difficult that actually is for her.
Yeah. I mean, when you give your character a baby or a toddler, you think, what was I thinking? What went through my head to think that a child would be a good idea in this relationship? Because, when you've got the 2-year-old or the 3-year-old, I mean, when you did A Bitter Feast, you've got a 3 or 4-year-old there.
She was 3.
Yeah. And someone needs to look after her all the time.
Yeah.
The worst one for me was when Molly was in Paris, when Liam's just been born. Liam's a baby, and she was still needing to nurse him. I've got this child in Paris and I'm all alone and I need to nurse him. This is really annoying.
I love that book, though. That's one of my favorites in the whole series.
I like
it. Claire, having got a taste of the writing life, do you think you might consider doing something on your own?
I would love to, actually. I would. I do have an idea for a series that's in my head. And I'd like to keep writing Molly as long as I can. And yes, I would love, my dream would be to become a two a year writer like my mom is. She's just amazing with her 2 books a year. But yes, I have the writing bug, and I enjoy it so much. When it's flowing, I have the same feeling like when I'm reading a good book. So It's just a great feeling.
Yeah. Molly, Molly and Daniel collect Social Security,
I'm sure you both can agree that when you reach a point in a book that you're writing and you would rather be in the book that you're writing than be in any other book that you're reading, you're in a good place.
Oh yeah.
The story is flowing. So Claire, would you be interested in another historical series?
Yes, I'm looking at the 1920s, still in New York in the 1920s. So I'm not sure if I should say much more about that. I'll ask, but yes,
don't jinx it.
No, I won't jinx it, because it's not really out there except for my head and what I've talked over with Rhys. But yes, I do definitely have an idea.
So in between Molly and teaching and kids and
yeah, she teaches all day, and I mean, I have to tell you, it's a bit better now, but the last year she was director of distance learning during the pandemic, so she was doing 60-hour weeks, getting everybody's everybody's packet, working with the kids who didn't know how to log in, couldn't remember the password, all those things every day. And then parents would call her at 10 o'clock at night and say, yesterday's assignment was too easy for my child, or yesterday's assignment was too hard for my child. And I said, just say, write it, go and teach them your bloody self then.
What age are the kids, Claire?
I was overseeing the program that was kindergarten all the way through 6th grade. I was so I helped get all 3 levels going and design the curriculum. And then I took the 4th through 6th graders with a co-teacher, and we did all of their instruction to start with. So to start with, I had 90 kids between the two of us. And then by the end of the year, I think we were down. They were allowed to go back to school, but at certain points in the school year, they could opt to go back when their parents felt comfortable. And so by the end, we had about 30. But it was making their at-home packet. Everything they needed to learn would be printed out, and so they had it in front of them. And then I'm very conversant with Zoom because they would log in, and then I would actually teach the classes. My co-teacher and I would 4th grade math, 5th grade math, 6th grade math, 4th grade English, 4th grade English, 6th grade English all day. And then as soon as you logged off, kids had questions. So you're answering Google chats of how to do things. And I probably worked like 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. almost every day, and then spend all weekend grading, and then wrote a book.
So I think you can do anything after that. I'm a big Montessori fan. My daughter went to Montessori from 3 up to 3rd grade, and that was only because her school didn't take kids older than that. So, but definitely got her off to a good start.
All 3 of my kids went from kindergarten all the way up to 8th grade. We have a wonderful Montessori program all the way up to 8th grade. They do this great heroic journey. It really is formation of the whole person all the way up. So I don't have my Montessori training. I've sort of been the adjunct in there with doing the music and then helping the kids that need a bit of help with their math, and running a gifted program in non-COVID years to kind of connect those out-of-the-box thinker kids. But I'm just in awe of the Montessori teachers. It's a beautiful classroom.
Yeah. Well, I think McKenna is going to come back and see if we have some questions from the audience.
Yeah.
Hi, we do have questions from the audience, but before we get to those, I want to give you, Deb, a chance to talk about what you're working on and what maybe we will see from you next.
Well, there will be a book. The slowest book, here are Rhys and Clare, and Rhys is turning out 2.5 books a year, and Clare has done 2 books now, as well as teaching in the pandemic, and I am just slow. What happened is I just started the research for this book, which is called A Killing of Innocence, and then got shut down by the pandemic. And so I missed my research trips. And this book will have been written with huge, huge help from Google Maps. And there are locations that I have been to, and there are places that I manage. There are places that I was already familiar with as settings, and places that I had just barely got my toe in on that trip. It was right after BoucherCon in 2019. I left the day after BoucherCon finished for 3 weeks in London, but there will be a book, and I thought I might have a cover to show you, but it hasn't shown up yet. So,
well, why don't you? Because I'm sure so many of the people viewing are familiar with Rhys's different series. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about your 2 main characters and kind of just the background of the series?
Well, Molly Murphy is. She comes to New York. She's an Irish immigrant who, when the series starts, she has. Sorry, is that my phone? Yeah, let's hope it's picked up by somebody. Yes, when the series starts, she has fled from her native Ireland because she's accidentally killed a man who was trying to rape her, and she gets as far as Ellis Island, fleeing for her life. And while she's on Ellis Island, a murder occurs, and the name she's using, an assumed name, the name she's using shows up as the prime suspect. So that was the driving force behind Murphy's Law. And since then, she's managed to survive in New York. Not only survive, but thrive, really. She's eventually married. She's eventually had a son, and she's now nicely settled in many ways. And so, she's come almost full circle by this book, because she's able to help someone who has come in similar circumstances to herself. You also want to know a bit about my other series? Is that what you?
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
Well, my other ongoing series is very different. My heroine is a minor royal in the 1930s. She's Lady Victoria Georgiana Charlotte Eugenie, called Lady Georgie. She's 35th in line to the throne, and she's flat broke when the series starts. And so we have a lot of interaction with the royal family, with Mrs. Simpson and the Prince of Wales, and various personalities of the time. Noel Coward and people make cameo appearances. So it's light, it's funny, and it's a lot of fun to write. So I think doing the 2 is really good, because Molly is a lot more meaty, a lot of real history, a lot of depth of everything. And Lady Georgie is just, a lot of fun. And then, of course, I do big standalones, which are, real history, much, much more involved, much darker. And, that's in my spare time. I do those.
Yes. So I have a question that I always like to ask guests. We have people watching, and they're just quiet. I think everyone's just been enjoying the chat. So we did have one question from the audience, wondering if the Molly Murphy books need to be read in order.
Each book is complete in itself. If you read the series in order, you see the evolving relationships, which I think are quite pleasing to see. So you can pick up any one, see if the series is for you, but then go back to the beginning and read them, because you'll see how her relationships develop as the series goes along.
Yes. So the question I always like to ask, and I'll ask all of you, so what books did you read in your formative years? So elementary school, middle school, high school, that you think made you want to be a writer? And how about we start with Clare?
Well, I would have to say The Lord of the Rings. All of the poetry that's in there, that it's got the prose, the poetry, the very developed characters. the very developed world around the characters. Then also all the C.S. Lewis books, the idea that you could use a fable to tell a true story. I love that. And then all of my mom's books. That was my formative years. She wrote children's books when I was a child. She wrote teen books when I was a teen. And so, I grew up knowing that someone could be a working writer. That made me want to be a writer.
Claire, did Rhys save all her Enid Blyton books for you? We were talking about Enid Blyton.
Yes. Oh, yeah. My favorite, of course, The Land of Far Beyond is my absolute favorite Enid Blyton. But I read The Fabulous Five and is it Fabulous Five and Famous Four?
Famous Five. Secret Seven. Yeah.
Secret Island. Yeah, I loved those books.
They're finally reissuing them all in the U.S. here, and I have this huge order. We're going to have a giant bookcase because when I ask this question, I get Nancy Drew or Enid Blyton, depending on the nationality of the author, and that's it. They always come up. Enid Blyton always. So I'm very excited that they're reprinting the whole series here in the U.S. I think very soon. How about you, Deb?
Oh, I was just going to say about the Enid Blytons. I carried them from the UK because, well, my daughter's dad is Scottish, and whenever we went to the UK, I came back with suitcases full of Enid Blyton books. So, and I still have them all in my dining room, but their pages are probably getting yucky, and so we're going to have to look at the reissues.
Yeah, they look great
for my granddaughter. I read Lord of the Rings in just obsessively. It's interesting that we all share that, and the C.S. Lewis books. And then in my teens, I guess I discovered Dorothy Sayers and Golden Age mysteries. And I think my first real crush was Lord Peter Wimsey. Very first time I went to London, I had to go to 121 Piccadilly?
Yeah.
To see where Lord Peter's flat was. But I read a lot of science fiction and fantasy novels. But when I sat down to actually write a book, the only thing that I wanted to write was British mysteries. So,
And how about you, Rhys?
Well, it's so interesting that we're all on the same page here because, when I was like 9, 10, I loved the Famous Five. The fact that George was this girl who was allowed to wear shorts and run around and do everything the boys could do. And that the group of friends, they were allowed to go to an uninhabited island and camp there and light fires. And of course, if you read them now, how absolutely unrealistic they were. They trap the smugglers in the cave, and they say, "We've got you now, you naughty men." And they say, "Oh, we're sorry, we won't do it again. We'll just shoot you all and leave your bodies here." They don't say that. But no, like Deb too. I mean, I also was very much into fantasy. I mean, when I was a very little girl, the Enid Blytons, the Faraway Tree, and the Wishing Chair, and all of those. And then in my teens, C.S. Lewis. And once I read The Lord of the Rings, I decided I would never write fantasy because I knew I couldn't do it better than that. So, that was it. I enjoyed fantasy. I went through all the Anne McCaffrey and John Christopher and all those people I loved. But The Lord of the Rings was the ultimate. So I also, during my teens, the first time I went to the adult section of the library, there I am in this huge, I didn't know where to start. And I looked around and I saw the words Agatha Christie, and I thought, oh, I know that. My mum's got some of those. So I started on Agatha Christie, and then I found Marjorie Allingham and Naomi Marsh and Josephine Tay, and I went through all of those. And I loved them all growing up, and they're still my comfort books. If I'm stressed, I got all the Agatha Christies, and I will pull one down and I will read it because I know I feel comforted in knowing it will end well, knowing it's in an environment I can handle, and I love that still. It's
Yeah. Oh, I was a huge Dick Francis fan too. As was my dad, and so that was the thing that we shared. I have signed Dick Francis novels. Whenever there was a new book, either whoever had the closest birthday or Christmas, it would be a gift and we would share it.
Yeah.
So haven't been tempted to write a horse racing novel yet, though.
I went
maybe one day.
I went through a big Sherlock Holmes phase as well. When about middle school, where I had a pipe and a deer stalker and read all the Sherlock Holmes books.
That's great. That's great. Okay, well, we have, like I said, we have a quiet audience. I think all the comments are just that they're enjoying the talk. No more questions. I think we covered it. I will mention once again that the new book out today is Wild Irish Rose, and Deb Crombie's series featuring Gemma James and Duncan Kincaid is one of our favorites, and we're looking forward to a new one of those. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. Thanks to those of you watching. And I think it's time to sign off. Hopefully we'll do this in person soon.
Yes.
Oh, it would be great.
Yes. I have never missed a launch at Murder by the Book. So since I haven't had a book out since the beginning of the pandemic, maybe, knock wood.
Fingers crossed.
Tradition.
Fingers crossed, tradition will continue. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're always welcome. And Rhys and Clare, you are always welcome as well. So everyone have a wonderful night. Congrats again on the new book. And
thank you, McKenna. Thank you so much.
Thank you, McKenna.
Yeah. And we're off just in time for President Biden. Wasn't that bad timing,
Exactly. All right. Good evening, everyone. Bye.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.